by and had a really great reaction, but the audience was very different. So afterwards, I'm really looking forward to hear your thoughts and how you think the film can best be used as a tool to create social change in India. I would like to thank Rajiv for inviting me here today and for all of the organizers for making this happen. I will be coming back afterwards and we'll have a Q&A so you can ask me any questions then. Thank you, enjoy.
Time flows on, the remorse never changing its course. Arrows already fire from the moon heart of yours. When you raise up your hands, higher, higher, raise up your hands, higher, higher, raise up your hands, higher, higher, raise up your hands.
That was awesome, thank you. Please come up on stage. Yeah. So I think we wanted to roll straight into the Q&A, and I know, like you, as I was sitting at the back, I was totally immersed in the story of Selvi and actually the craft of filmmaking and how well the message was delivered. But before we do that, I personally actually wanted to know much more about who Alyssa is and her story. I know that she's a photographer, she's a filmmaker, and obviously she's a wonderful human being for going out and finding these causes and stories and bringing it to her. But I did want her to explain a little bit about herself to us first before we get into anything else.
Anything specific?
No, whatever.
Well, maybe I'll start with who I was when I met Selvi, which was in 2004, so 14 years ago? 12 years ago. The first thing about me, I'm terrible at math. I always did much better in art class. Anyway, so I was living in Australia at the time. I'd been there for 10 years, and I was leaving Australia to move back to Canada. And I'd been overseas altogether 20 years. And on the way, I got a flight that stopped in Delhi, and I went to Mysore. And I was a tourist there, and after a few days I realized how hard it was to really get to know the people and the community and to really understand what India was. And I've really never been someone who loves tourism for tourism's sake. I'm more interested in people and what makes them tick. So I began to look for somewhere to do some volunteer work, and I happened upon Odinadi, which is the shelter where Selvi was living when I first met her. And I just was so intrigued by her, and I kept going back over and over and over again. But at that point, I hadn't made a film in 10 years. So for me, Selvi really changed my life because I went back to a form of art that I really love. And what else can I tell you? I'm from Toronto. And I don't speak any Kannada. I'm very embarrassed about that. I do speak Italian. I think that's everything.
So tell us a little more about just the whole process, because I know you so briefly made it sound very simple that you would go out there, connect with an organization like Odinadi, and then connect with Selvi, and I'm sure many others you connected with. So give us a sense for how that was, because even though I'm an Indian and I lived there for a long time, it's not easy, it's overwhelming. So just describe to us that little bit of your journey and also some of the other people that you met in that journey.
Okay, so when I went to India, it was, whatever that year was, I said 2004, and I had a publication, like the version of The Lonely Planet that I had with me, and in it described Mysore as a quiet and sleepy town. And I just come from living in Sydney, which is, 3 million people or something like that, which is, it's not a crazy city, but I had done a lot of traveling in many, many countries, and I got out of the car that dropped me off in front of my hotel, and I was overwhelmed. Since then, I've learned that actually Mysore is a quiet and sleepy town compared to most cities. But so my first reaction was just overwhelm, sensory overload. And so it was pretty difficult to really just start to feel like a normal human being there. And then I quickly learned that actually there is no normal human being, and we all are so different in this same world. So, you know, I knew that I wanted to do some volunteer work somewhere, and I just happened upon a young woman who was working at Odinati, and she brought me with her to help her do a puppet workshop for the girls. So in a way, I was introduced to these women and girls in a very gentle way. And I had very little knowledge about child marriage, about human trafficking. You know, I knew that there was a lot of gender violence and gender discrimination in India, but I hadn't really understood to what level. So, you know, it was a big challenge personally for me to hear these stories. So that first year I went as a puppet workshop person, and within about a day the directors heard that I had a video background and asked me to start shooting something for them. So I began interviewing the girls and women, and I was just heartbroken by the stories that I was being told, but I was also so full of hope by the positive attitudes that many of these girls had. And I mean, Selvi in particular, she really had something that stood out. But many other girls did too. So, you know, Selvi's story is just one of millions, but unfortunately her past is the story of many more. But, so, you know, it was, in a way it just sort of happened. It's like I didn't set out to make a film. I wasn't looking for a story. I didn't know that I was going to be meeting these women, and it was just like each small step brought so much more to me personally, and more inspiration, and, you know, wanting to have a better understanding. Shooting in India is very complicated. You know, we spend a lot of time waiting for things to happen and for people to show up, and, you know, just all the complications that we're all familiar with. But in a way, I feel like I never had any major problems. I was never unsafe. The film took 10 years of shooting, and I certainly didn't expect that. You know, I thought that I met Selvi in 2004, and then I went back in 2000, and she just kept growing. So that was the only difficulty I had with this film. Selvi kept growing. She kept healing more and more, and I kept wanting to capture that. Hardly a problem.
Thank you. And I don't know if the audience knows this, but I know that because of your efforts and Selvi herself, lately Selvi visited New York, you were with the Ford Foundation, so you want to share some of that with the audience, and what kind of experience was it? What kind of questions, just a little bit of that. I don't know if everybody in the hall is familiar with what's been going on with what you've done with the movie, but also for the cause.
Right. Well, there's a big answer to that. I'm going to backtrack a little bit to say that a few years ago, when this film was starting to get close to completion, I started to develop an idea for an audience engagement and impact campaign in India, because I really felt that Selvi's story has such strong resonance with women, and it's such a positive story and can give hope to other girls and women. And thing is that more than hope, I mean, hope is really great, but we wanted to be able to leave something behind that was more than hope and create some sort of sustainable project. So right now our goals are to screen the film to 1 million women and men and boys in India, partially to open up dialogue about and shift attitudes towards child marriage, but really what I'm interested in is opening a dialogue and really creating opportunities for women to work in non-traditional livelihoods, because what I saw with Selvi, sitting behind the wheel, that's a man's job, yet she became so empowered from that I know that she also wants to share her story with people. So we're going to be traveling around India. So right now I've partnered with ITVS, which is the Independent Television Services. It's a US-based organization, and they are funded by Ford Foundation, and they go into a number of developing countries and they share films with communities. And next week I'm going to Mumbai, and we're having our first sort of launch of the work that they're going to be doing. And after that, they'll be taking the film into the urban slums of Delhi and Mumbai and some other regions of the country. And they'll be showing it to 22,000 women and men and girls in the next few months. So that's sort of part of that. But then we go back to Selvi coming to New York. So last 2 weeks ago, and it's really unfortunate she couldn't stay for this. But 2 weeks ago, we were in New York City with the Ford Foundation, and Selvi sat on a panel with USAID, UN Women, CARE, and many other high-level people working in gender rights. And to see this girl who 12 years earlier had never left her village, she was so proud, yet so nonchalant. You know, she felt like she knew that she belonged with these women. And it was a really incredible experience for her. And she's really motivated and committed. In fact, when she traveled home, 30-hour flight plus a 7-hour drive, alone with her 1-year-old baby. And I was so afraid for her. How'd it go? It was terrible. She didn't sleep. We're both sick now. It was awful. So is that going to change you coming back to Canada next month? She said, no, absolutely not. This is my responsibility. This is my work. A little bit of discomfort on the plane has nothing compared to the work that we're doing. So she's pretty incredible.
And before I turn it over to the audience, I do want to make a little bit of a plug. There is a list over there where Lisa's requesting that you guys put your email, because part of this is supporting her effort at creating the impact and outreach. And on that, I do want to turn to you and Elisa, ask you a little bit about the local connection here when you were trying to get the funding going for your film, and how you met with Rajiv.
Yes. So I held an Indiegogo campaign. Is everyone here familiar with crowdfunding? I'm going to describe it a little bit. Crowdfunding is basically when people contribute money in exchange for some sort of gift, and whatever they're putting their money into has a purpose. And in the case, I did an Indiegogo campaign because I needed to raise money to finish the film. And I actually needed to raise $50,000, but the people at Indiegogo said, go for 30, and then if you reach 30, you can ask for more. So I followed their recommendation, and I was at the 30 mark, and I was in Mysore. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, sitting at my computer, changing some graphic design so I could put it online and say that we'd reached our goal, yay, and we need another $20,000, when boom, my computer buzzed, and we'd gone from 30 to 40,000 in seconds. And I was, what happened? Who is this person? And I emailed right away, because the email comes radio silent, so it's some mystery donor. And eventually, it turned out to be Rajiv, and I really can't thank you enough for the timing, for how you expressed your appreciation for the work that we're doing and for Selvi. And apparently, he had a bad day at work, or a difficult day at work, and was driving home and had the BBC on and heard an interview with Selvi. He was like, hey, this is my family's hometown, so he went home and went online. So thank you for that. And his perk was to have a screening. And so this is his gift being given back for his generosity.
And now questions from the floor. Now the mic here, will you just sort of raise your voice.
Hi.
Nice to meet you again.
Nice to meet you again.
So, could you comment on your relationship with Selvi? I know you have followed her through so many years. So, what exactly is your relationship with Selvi, and how does it work?
Okay, here's a disclaimer. Revati and I met a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago in New York City. She was translating for Selvi at the Ford Foundation. So she got to know both of us. But so you would have seen firsthand that we are very close. I see Selvi as a very close friend, as a mother, because she's quite mothering with me, as a daughter. our relationship really kind of morphs depending on the needs, but we're really close. And that's really not highly recommended when you're making a film, to actually become friends with the subject of your film, because you can be influenced by them. And I definitely have been influenced by Selvi, but I think in a very positive way. I think that the film itself would never have had the kind of intimacy it has had we not become friends, and I think that that really is, you know, part of the strength of it. But we have a lot of fun together. She's a wonderful woman. She's very childish. She's very mature. She's just full of contradictions.
Do you feel that anybody else would have been able to get her real story if you hadn't had that closeness? Which both of them were very reluctant to tell what really happened.
So you're asking if I would have, if someone else would have been able to get this story? You know what, most filmmakers don't have the patience to be able to get that story. I don't want to say that no one else could have, but I don't think anyone could have if they weren't committed to really spending a lot of time with Selvi. And, you know, I didn't spend time with Selvi because it was a job I was trying to do or a film I was trying to do. It was hard to separate the friendship from the filmmaking. And yeah, I think it would have been hard for someone else without that relationship.
So you made other films. So talk a little bit about how, because this was such a close and long tenure sort of, journey. How does that compare with your other experiences?
So when I lived in Italy before Australia, I had a production company there, and I did a lot of short films and a lot of television work. I had never done a full-length film back then, and after I started to shoot Driving with Selvi, I also came across another story I was interested in, and I made the film Embracing Voices, which tells about Jane Bennett, a very famous Canadian saxophonist. She's a jazz instrumentalist, and she'd gone through depression and was facing a creative block. And that film also took a very long time to make, and it really wasn't that different in the process, that Jane and I actually became quite close. And we spent a lot of time socializing as well as shooting. So I guess in a way, like my curiosity is a bit, some people say I'm obnoxious, you know, I want to know things about people that I shouldn't, but I really love people, I love getting to know them, and I think that's the process for my filmmaking as well.
And that certainly showed up in the film, absolutely.
Yes. Did the local media or the government around knew that you were filming this, and what was their reaction to it?
Is there anyone in the audience that is going to give away my secrets? No, I'm a one-person crew. You know, it was just me, Selvi, and a translator. We weren't really shooting outside of Selvi's house. In fact, in the beginning, we had to shoot with the door closed, and then the next year, the door could be open, and so on until eventually she would go outside. But no, there was never any problem.
Can you talk about the techniques that you use for some of the shots that you acquire?
Takes the camera guy to ask a question like that, but thank you, because I always like talking about that. So 10 years of shooting means about 12 different cameras, which was very, very complicated to bring them all together. But I think probably you're talking about some of the more visual shots where we're driving and it feels like it's going in and out of focus and there's a strange depth of field. Those were done with a Canon, the Mark II? Mark II? Yeah, thank you. And we had a plug-in in the software, and we worked at a very, very wide open lens with neutral density filters on it so that we could open up. This probably doesn't mean much to most of you, but we really played with that. We were able to play with the depth of field in the middle of the day because of those filters.
And I noted that you sort of love going really low in terms of getting a perspective in many of your more dramatic shots. Is that something that you do, or it was just something that fit at the moment?
Well, I'm always looking for, I mean, I'm a photographer. My background is photography. So, I'm always looking at my scene from a photographic perspective. I'm not sure about the actual, I know that Selvi would comment, why are you always filming my feet? So whenever she'd pick up the camera, she'd always want to film my feet too. So if you're talking about that, like shooting...
I think I noticed there was the shot of the temple, which is at a really low angle, the shot of this banyan tree, which is really...
Right, yes.
Up, and then there's, panning out, which was all sort of interesting techniques, and it sort of added to the combination of intimacy, but at times it gives a...
Right. Well, I think it's just that, those are really wide shots, or when I'm trying to give a sense of lack of intimacy, just where are we? We're going to slowly go into it to find out more about what's happening.
People that have gone beyond 10 years' time, maybe, like Selvi got a second baby, she started a business of her own, and on and on.
Yes, I could. Do you know 7 Up? It's a British documentary that followed 7 7-year-olds. And then every 7 years went back, and now they're like 50 something. I don't want to do that. I could have kept following Selvi, and I think that really the work that she's doing now and all of the stuff that's going to happen with our screenings in India would be really interesting. But at the same time, I think that this story is closed. I could have kept going, and in fact, my friends would always say to me, "You're never going to finish. You're just making excuses to keep going back to India. You have a fear of closure," like psychoanalyzing me about why I wasn't finishing the film. But in fact, I hadn't finished the film because I needed there to be an ending. And the ending was when Selvi had obviously healed. And her transformation, although it's not over because we all keep transforming, that place that she had dreamt of being in, she was there. And then it became obvious.
Yes, I have a question. Since your film took about 10 years to make, so how much technology played the role? Because Selvi did not have access to, say, cell phones or computers and all. So over the period of 10 years, how has technology empowered women in India?
So I can't remember when Selvi first got her cell phone, but because she was working at that at Prerana, the women's medical outreach clinic, I think that's probably when she got access to a computer and a cell phone. I see it's really moving forward in India. Like, it used to be that no one had cell phones. Now I think every single person over the age of 10 has one almost. Is that going to change things? I don't know. Like, I think the fact that people have the capacity of reaching out if they need to. On the other hand, most people have a cell phone that can only have incoming calls because they don't have enough money to make an outgoing call. I think that there's a lot of work being done, a lot of innovation being done in India right now on how to use cell phones as part of making women secure. Like, there's new phone apps where women can let other people know where they are so that they know that they get home. So I think that, I think just being a phone call away from someone is really helpful when it comes to safety, for sure.
So it was a wonderful film. I particularly enjoyed the intimacy as you described, knowing about her over the years. The one part I really loved was when she goes to visit her aunt. The fact that she could drive herself, she didn't have to depend on anyone else, is very touching. A simple thing, or a complex thing, that gave her the independence. I was curious how your film has been received by audiences so far that you've shown to in India.
So the question, just in case you couldn't hear, is how are the audiences in India reacting? And I said when I was saying hello earlier, is that I have shown the film at the Mumbai Film Festival, and I was really nervous about that because for a couple of reasons. I thought, well, I'm a foreigner and I'm telling their story, and that is, well, it's a really uncomfortable place to be in, but it also feels wrong to me in a way. I'll tell my stories, you tell your stories. But I think that because of the friendship that Selvi and I developed, it didn't matter where I was from, it was the fact that we cared about each other, and then certainly that I cared about her and respected her. I was also worried that the audience wouldn't want to hear stories about child marriage and about gender abuse. One, because they already hear it already and they know all about it, and because it's something that they don't want to hear from a foreigner. So being a foreigner was anyway, difficult for me. It turned out though that the audiences loved the film. They loved that they were able to get to know somebody in a situation in which they'd never been, in which they would never have gone on their own. I mean, there's a big, we all know there's a big class divide, and Selvi lives in the type of village where it's really hard to get to, it's really hard to get out of. So in that case, they really liked it. And then I think that they saw the perspective of an outsider. Not so much that I was an outsider, but both Selvi and I were outsiders, outside of what they were accustomed to for hearing stories. So no, it went over really, really well. I was really very happy. And we're going to be screening again in Mumbai in a couple of weeks, 18th of February. So he said that he's glad that I showed that there's VGs in the world, and I think that that is incredibly important because men very often have a bad name in India, and there are many men that are misogynist, and there are many men that don't care about what their wives do or their children do, but there are many great men, and VG is one of them. And I really hope that I hope that he'll be part of bringing the story to life in India because it's so important to hear from men. And I think really what this film needs to do is shift attitudes so that there can be more VGs. And in fact, Selvi always uses this saying, she's going, I shouldn't be the only Selvi, there should be many Selvis out there. So I think the same thing goes for VG.
So I just have a question on that too. You know, in the Indian community, we talk a lot about domestic violence, and we talk about how it mostly affects women, but we never get the male perspective. And I know your movie focused on the female perspective from Selvi, but even the shot where Selvi goes and sees her friend, the male are off camera. They're not really part of the conversation except for whatever's exchanged between the ladies. How did you choose to do that? Was there something more involved there? And how to bring out the male voice and educate males and see what their perspective is on this?
So with 10 years of filming, it also means hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage. So I purposely chose not to hear the voices of men. That was a decision. It was actually very, very late in the production that I included VG's voice at all, because I wanted it to be purely from Selvi's point of view. I realized that VG needed to be there because he is such an instrumental part of Selvi feeling like she's part of mainstream society. And I also want to show that he is supportive and that there are supportive men out there. And there was a second part of the question, what was it? How do we get the male voice out there? Well, so the ITBS work, their focus actually is on changing attitudes of men. So their campaign is focused on men and boys and about creating conversation early on in a boy's life so that he can learn early on about gender equality. I think that there's a lot of work going on now in India, a lot more than there used to be. I don't know if you're familiar with Breakthrough. It's actually started in New York, but it's India-based now, and they're doing, or maybe it's finished, but they've also been doing campaigns that focus on men. Odinati as well is focusing on men now too. I think it's actually a new, it's only been the last few years that we've been hearing about that, but it really has changed. I don't know yet what the impact is. It'll be interesting to see in 3, 4, 5 years from now if there's been any real change, but I know that there's a lot more work being done. And are any of you familiar with the film called The World Before Her So The World Before Her is by a Canadian filmmaker. Her parents are Indian. She now lives in Mumbai, but it's a film that sort of contrasts the Miss India beauty pageant with the fundamental, it's the Hindustani fundamentalist girls training to be warriors. And her next film, she did really, really well and had a lot of success with her film. And she's actually right now developing a new film which speaks to men. It's called Where Are the Men? So I think that will have a big impact as well.
There also is a TED Talk about dowry and the male perspective on that.
So there's a TED Talk that from the man's perspective on dowry. I'll look into that, that'd be interesting.
Hi, a fantastic film. I have two questions. Did ever emotions take you over while doing the film? And the second is, from a strategy or standing of, what were the coping strategies which Selvi was using? Could you get a glimpse of her coping strategy? Was it the religion which made her comfort? Or was it her husband, who obviously was a part of, giving her very positive feeling? If you could spend a little.
Could you repeat the first part of your question?
Did emotions ever take over you while making the film? Because when you look at trauma, when you look at what is going on, can you keep yourself away from it professionally? Yes, but what kind of emotions went through you?
Right. So for many years I was able to use the camera as a shield. When I lived in Italy, I was doing video reporting during the time of Mani Puliti, which is when the judges and other politicians were being murdered by the mafia. And I was living in Palermo at the time. And I was also most often there to see corpses on the ground with blood. And I can't even stand the sight of my own blood, but with a camera over my shoulder, I felt like I had no real emotion. And when I was shooting with Selvi, that didn't work. And maybe it's because we had a friendship. Maybe it's because she was a live person in front of me. I think it's a natural thing to have an emotional experience when you're dealing with her story. So I had moments that I would break down. And in fact, one day Selvi cried. Selvi cries in the film quite often, but she actually doesn't cry very often in real life. And I'm much more of a crier, much more emotional she is. And one day she cried, she goes, "Oh, I'm taking over your job." But, so yes, I became emotional on a number of occasions. During the scene where she has the breakdown, I was actually sitting at her feet holding her hand. And I was probably more upset than she was. So, yeah, it's impossible not to be when you care about someone so deeply. And that camera that was the shield really didn't work for me in that case. And the second part was?
The second part was, what do you think helped her cope?
Right, what helped her cope? I don't think I can really answer that. I still find that a mystery. I think she's so smart. I think it's her incredible intelligence, an instinct. She's got very, very sharp, strong instinct, and I think that's what helped her survive. Coping on a daily basis, I know she can't stand not having anything to do. She doesn't like being bored. She doesn't like doing housework, even if it keeps her busy, because she finds that meaningless. So I think having something meaningful in her life is what keeps her sane.
Beautiful movie, very emotional.
Thank you.
My question is, India makes a lot of movies, and has this topic been covered in any of the movies that you may have heard of from an Indian perspective?
Has this type of story been covered in India? I know in some independent films there is a Bombay filmmaker, Nagesh. I'm terrible with names. He did the film about the girl who was trafficked. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, he's talking. You know, he's talking about those subjects, and there's other filmmakers that are. But I think on the grander level of Bollywood, there isn't a lot being done. There will be. That is changing, but it's hard to dance to this kind of story.
Do you plan to do any screenings in like smaller towns and villages? Because I'm sure the impact will be much greater if we do that.
Yes, that's exactly what our intentions are. Our goal is to get the film into the more rural and difficult to reach communities. We'll be working with video vans and mobile cinemas and technology to get into places where there isn't as much electricity. But yeah, absolutely, that is our goal.
Hi, my question is actually about Selvi. She mentioned in the film that when she was a kid, she dreamed about studying rather than being married. And now, sorry about that. She mentioned in the film that she dreamt of studying rather than being married off. Do you think that she'll ever attend school now? Or will she kind of leave that for her daughter to be that legacy?
So, that is a great and timely question. I got a phone call from Selvi the other day. I mean, I've always encouraged her, hey, you should think, she's got 9th standard, so she's done 9th. She needs to get her 10th certificate in order to be able to officially work in many different, or even get a bus license. You saw that they gave it to her anyway. But anyway, she called me the other day and she said, oh, I've been to see my master. Her master is who her last teacher was before she was married. I've gone to see my master and I asked him what I had to do to get my 10th certificate. And I said, oh, that's great. And she goes, yeah, I'm going back there. I'm going to spend some time. He's going to give me the exams. He's going to give me the layout. And I'll be able to get it pretty quickly so then I can start doing grade 11 and 12. And he said, once I'm done that, I can go to university. So she got on a bus and went 3 hours anyway, 3 hours to go see this master. So I think she's going to go there. I hope she does because she's so smart. She could do anything that she dreams of.
So are you going to be dubbing this movie in different languages so you can show them in various languages?
So the question was, is it going to be dubbed into various languages? Yes, it is. Right now it's dubbed into Hindi, Marathi, and terrible. What is the language of Orissa? Uriya. It's dubbed into those languages. And what my plan with it is any community that has a large enough group of people to see the film in which we can raise enough money to bring the film into that specific state, then it will be dubbed. So I think it's something that will slowly be dubbed into many more languages over the years.
During the 10 years, did you ever get frustrated that you wanted to stop? And if so, what drove you to finish it?
Well, I'm a very determined person. When I was a little kid, I quit everything I started. And then that changed when I became an adult. I'm not sure why, maybe because I was allowed to quit. Actually, I wasn't allowed to quit. Anyway, yes, I was frustrated many times. There's so many times that I thought, oh, I can't do this again. I was spending 3-4 months a year in India. I'd go for a couple months, come back, go for a few more months. So basically, I've really had no life during the making of this film, in the sense I haven't been able to construct something permanent in Toronto. Fortunately, the other work I do is organize photography tours in various countries of the world. So, I work for 2 weeks and then don't work for 4 months. So that's worked for me. But yeah, it was really frustrating, very frustrating. When I think back now, I don't think there was ever a time, though, that I said I'm going to give up. Never. If it had been someone else and not Selvi, I might have, but I could never have done that to her. I owed it to Selvi to finish the film after everything that she gave me.
So if there are more questions, I would sort of suggest that we break and, Elisa's around for a little bit, I hope, and take some time. I also want to make sure that depending on people's calendars, if some people have to sort of rush, then we should do that. I will invite Dr. Ramani Gora, who's the chair of the ICC, to give a vote of thanks. But before I do that, a couple of just sort of logistical things. So there are snacks and wine and samosas and cheese and all kinds of interesting stuff after the vote of thanks. But my other request would be, there are feedback forms. Some of them are still in shape, or some of them are not. But please do fill them, because I'm personally actually overwhelmed by the response that we got today. So I'm sitting at the back and saying, is that because we're doing a film? Is that because of the topic? Is that because it's January 30th and the sunshine outside? So I thank you for giving up your golf time, because and no football. Yeah, I mean, that's important. So I really give me that feedback, because this is actually about twice the size of the crowd that we get. In spite of Elisa's great personality, I'm still trying to figure out what that trick is, and maybe we have to get her here every time. But that apart, we would love that feedback, and because of that, if we run out of samosa, do excuse us, because our RSVPs were about only 30% of the number of people who showed up, and I'll take that anytime. But just with those disclaimers and sort of disclosures, thank you so much formally for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Can I say one more thing before? Yeah, actually there's one thing I want to say, and then I want to ask a question to you, but I just wanted to make it clear about the campaign that we're doing, just so you get a really broad idea. I said that we want to screen it to 1 million women, but that's not actually our goal. That's just how to reach our goal. Our goal is actually to set up a social enterprise in India where women can be owners of their own cars, where they'll receive free training to become taxi drivers, and then they'll be able to partner in a larger India-wide organization. That's a huge endeavor, so we're looking for partnerships in India. I'm currently talking to some international banks here in the US. But if you know anyone in India who works in the corporate social responsibility field in a type of corporation that might have something to do with driving and education and women, I'd love to talk to you more about that. And I think I have a mailing list over there if you'd like to sign it. I don't send out emails very often, every few months, just to say what the screenings are and what Selvi's up to and how the campaign is going.
No, absolutely, and I think if this is a way that many of us who've not been aware of crowdfunding get our feet into it, then we would be very, very happy to do that, and this is a very generous crowd.
Well, thank you very much. I did have a question, but I can't remember it, so I'll ask you individually. Thanks.
Thank you. Before I say a word of thanks, yeah, what else we can do is India Community Center in Indian community in Rochester. I got your message, the last thing you said. What else we can do for you? We have to do.
Well, it's also just letting other people know about the film. We have created something online where you can make a request to host your own screening. So if you think that you have a group of people that would be interested in seeing the film, we can get the film to you. And the goal of getting a film to someone is so that then they can learn about Selvi and learn about the work that we're doing in India. Part of what we're doing is sort of a donation to the campaign. We'll bring $10, will allow 5 women to see the film in India. You know, we're working sort of in those regards. Spreading the word about the film is great, but also letting people in India know about the campaign. If you know anyone who works in NGOs that might host a screening, that's really helpful as well. We're really just trying to, it's very new, we're just starting out, but we're trying to reaching a wide audience.
Thanks, that's great.
Thank you.
Well, such a touchable film, really touching film. We have to learn a lot from Selvi, such a positive person, and Yeah, that's sure. India, hopefully changes are occurring, but we have a long way to go. Anyway, thank you very much, Eliza Pulaski. Please give a big round. And she not only stopping just making just a film, but she's going to spread a lot of messages through the My Message of India. So thank you very much.
And because Eastman House has the largest collection now of Indian films, we'd like to present to you some token here, Bollywood posters of you understand more about Indian culture from this. And most of these films, old films, are on Eastman color, so remember Rochester as well.
And thank to Rajiv Ramchandran, Dr. Rajiv. Thanks to Chetna, Professional Forum, bringing this film for us. And thanks for a lot of volunteers. We really appreciate all the hard work they did. And thanks to you all of you, for coming over here sharing this afternoon with us. We can keep bringing such program. Please, I thank you for being an ICC member. But if you are not and become ICC member, we want to fill up all weekends at ICC. You can spend the ICC with something like some such program. So we need all your support. Thank you for supporting, and we look forward to such program more and more. Thanks.
Hey, Jenny, how are you?
Done.
Don't touch me. That's my lens.
But the lens is looking at me. That's wrong.
So?
Actually, one more announcement before you leave. Next program at ICC's ICC annual banquet dinner. That is on March 26th, Saturday. Please
spicy से Somebody's gonna watch the little one.
That's true. Yeah, forgot.
Selvi, I don't see Lisa here, so I invited her. Melissa at the University of Rochester. She's a professor who's talking about various other
One day at a time. She's good. She's in California,
He wanted to announce everything and I told him no, right now. Hello? Don't do it that thing right now until she come back. If we announce something, then fall apart.